Hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. The title is Mapping the World Onto Itself, and in the subtitle I've written Attention Suggests Reality. In this episode, rather than focusing more on the mystical side, I want to propose for myself, this has been my passion for some time, where I noticed that there's a known component to our world, and then there's an unknown component. And this relationship between the known and the unknown is our whole life, stretching from, let's say, kids, like when the person's young and they want to escape the known boundaries and go do something wondrous, or in whatever age you are, you have a relationship with how you know things and how you don't know things. Right? And when you're younger, you're uncomfortable with how you don't know. But I find it's the case that as we keep waking up in this world, we notice that the unknown is here. Now, after we notice the unknown, there has been efforts, there's been attempts, there has been human behavior trying to do something with this unknown. The concept of a map, of course, before I talk about it in regards to Numenon and Quela and what I personally call the inner realms, in front of our eyes, pretty much when it comes to the known component, when we discovered that there were different parts to the planet that we didn't know before, and just the advancement of going from a flat earth consideration, where the idea playfully could be said to be like a ship moving at the end of the ocean into the void of space, as if from a flat conception of the earth, we came to a spherical conception of the earth. Now, just to say something, because I've noticed now it's the trend that there is like this whole debate between flat earth, is the earth spherical, and this whole deal. And the idea is that if the realm is multidimensional, you can never tell. Just like how the lack of information we had, what appeared to us as something as a flat plane became a sphere. I don't know, with maybe like when looking at life in 12 dimensions, or I don't know, what is it, like 10 to 11 dimensions of 10 dimensions of string theory. For example, I'm just saying that the picture of the world has been changing. And in the outer realms, we've been able to map it because the outer realm changes slower than our minds. But the attempt to, not only pretty much like creatures emerged, they moved around. There was uncharted territory, terra incognita. We went into that uncharted territory, we named it, we localized it. It's just like the same way that what was the name, Neil Armstrong, where he put the flag on the moon. It's as if in the same way we have been mapping reality. Now the cool thing is there's two layers. This is what I consider in these Mr.Within talks I'm saying, and I feel more people need to say it, but I don't see others saying it. So but anyways, it's this idea that there is a multiplicity of selfhood going on, and behind the eyes, them appearing as a sort of river of intelligence. What that means is, right now, in this moment I'm speaking, this moment, this exact moment that I just said, this moment, this moment has become part of my past, but right now I'm accessing it in the present. And so it's like this confusion of, am I who I was yesterday, or am I who am I now, or am I who I will be tomorrow? And so to give something a value when the system is changing, of course, that's the challenge. But we did that in the outer realms. In the outer realms, we mapped it. And there's different kinds of maps. I don't know if people know this, but I found this to be so hilarious. Even though when I was young, this was something in my what was it, in social studies, I think they taught me when I was in middle school. But pretty much the idea was that every nation had drawn a map of the planet where it put itself in the center. And I found that ridiculous. I found that it's as if like the flat earth thing happening on a nationalistic level. That means honestly, it's like that's the ego of nationalism, is flat earth, right? If we treated it as a sphere, it would be as if like we are, how would I say it? I find it strange that we have nations and not a global recognition that we're all creatures on a rock. You know, can you imagine in the future this movement starts, people call it Rock Nation, and they're like, what is this? You know, it's that all the nations are on the same rock, goddamn. But anyways, I'm just trying to say that in the outer realms we map things. And different cultures, different parts of the world, they mapped it differently. And the cool thing about knowledge is not like something out there. I don't even know how the educational system has convinced the world that you can get knowledge. Like that's like, excuse me, but that's incredibly foolish. Knowledge is not something you can get. Knowledge is what you can say arises as a response to landscape. That means it's like before you can even conceive the idea, or even it's like this, it's like saying before you can even speak the words, you need to know what letters are. Right now, imagine someone, what's another way I can say this? I'm just trying to say that if we treated the creature as a dynamic, with a dynamic intelligence rather than a kind of static snapshot photo kind of intelligence, the knowledge is endlessly unknown as long as it's alive. That means I'm sitting here giving these talks, but if I was to be honest with myself, until I have completed this journey, whenever it's my time to exit the realm, right, until I've completed it, it's like there is no 100% certainty. It's as if like a mid roller coaster ride. It's like, what opinion can I give on the roller coaster, you know? To be honest, I'm just sharing what I see in this lifetime. And I try to share it as my presence, through my presence before my personality. But in a world of personalities, what can you do? You know, you wake up every day and you're like, who's that in the mirror? A new self? A new me? Oh my god. So anyways, human beings have mapped what's in front of our eyes, and in history we can say we have reached a point where we are mapping what is behind our eyes. And I'm going to attempt to do this anew. I've mapped it throughout in these 6 years that I started my great work. It was I've come up with different angles on it, like different ways I've personally mapped it. But in this episode, I felt like trying to find a new one, believe it or not. So I'm trying to not lean on tunnels I've already dug before. So, how would we start? We compare from, and of course guys, just like Rene Descartes had mind-body dualism. In the way I speak, I'm going to give a talk on this probably tomorrow or the day after, but I call it Mr.Within's inner-outer realmism, right? Rene Descartes had mind-body dualism. I would say this is Mr.Within's inner and outer realmism, right? And realmism is a word, I'm pretty sure like a few people have tried to move that, carry that banner. Because self, we're living at a time, I mean, who are we kidding? Self is more important than world. And because we need to survive. If survival was perfect, it would be so easy to be helpful, to be kind, to help the world, right? It's like if everybody, I'm sure that a lot of, let's say, evil doings or cruel actions in society, it's all materialistic reason. That means sometimes I wonder if everybody on the planet, let's say universal income kicked in and the government was like, oh my God, citizens, we have realized that money is an abstraction, right? So everybody's a billionaire. Like, you know how Oprah Winfrey, she's awesome, like in her shows, she's yeah, Oprah in her shows, she would give gifts to the audience, and the audience, like, at some point, I think, didn't even care, like, who the guest was. The audience was like, oh my God, I'm clapping for the gift I'm gonna get it then. But Oprah, in one show, she gave all the audience, like, I don't know, 100 people or something, like, each one a car, right? And the audience was freaking out. It's like, you get a car, oh my God, I have one, but okay. Okay, let's get into it. So, how do we explore, how do we map the outer realms, right? If we want to street smart our way, we gotta first figure out what the streets are, right? And sorry guys, one thing to say before I actually move on to the next idea. If everybody had, just to finish off the last image, if everybody had, what do you call it? If everybody had all the outer realm physical resources, I think very few people would be cruel. I think violence will get bypassed, but by people's selfish curiosity to see how advanced they can be. Somehow we can allow the intellect. You see, it's all about, believe it or not, a coolness game. Because we have a sort of emotional, what's the term? It's just like when a person, when someone's selling a refrigerator, right? Or when someone's buying a refrigerator. It's like at the end of it, it's your emotion. The salesman can be like, sir, this is a refrigerator from the future, right? The salesman could be, sir, this refrigerator miraculously arrived in our store from the future. There's no model, there's no guarantee, and there's no money back, but it's from the future, right? And the person opens up the refrigerator and sees like a Stargate inside, and it's like, okay, I believe you, it's from the future. Then the person watches this refrigerator, then it says, I don't know, I don't like the color though. Do you see? That, when it comes to preference for color, that's the same mystery of what is the foundation of all that we know kept on. it's kept under just simple meaning. It's like, just like, what does the color red mean? What does the color blue mean? What does the color green mean? Right? Who can hate blue? Who can hate, believe it or not, a color? It's insanity. It doesn't even logically make sense. A human being, if we really went to the simplest principles, it would descend out of meaning. That means we ascended to a point through evolution where we had brains, and then there was a brain, and then there was a show. First we needed the projector, then the movie, right? So the projector emerged, then the movie of self would emerge, and this is the secular understanding, and especially if you hold your honor in evolution. What I'm trying to say, believe it or not, at its core cannot be said, and that's the challenge of mapping the inner realms. Let us enter the streets of the mind. First, we gotta consider, for me, whenever anybody speaks any word, doesn't matter if it's a sentence, if it's somebody speaking, for me it's as if, what is there? And so I look at words as if they are hiding something from me, and I look at them, and it's like suddenly it's as if there is an image behind the word, right? So it's a psychological mapping, right? So it could be that when we go to map the unknown element, so let me say it like this. Imagine in front of your eyes, that's known. What's going on behind your eyes, that's unknown. And so in front of your eyes, which is known, what do we see? We see a known self. Excuse me. In front of our eyes, we find a known self, and we find a known world. And so a known self, based on how it defines itself to its ability, is trying to map a known world accurately. But the intensity of the outer realms is that we will never be successful, because there is simply an greater than sign towards the unknown. That means the known is less than the unknown. Because it is less than the unknown, language will feel playful. That's why I'm saying people should use language playfully. Language is, if you identify with it, it's like you. That's like a mystic saying it, you. Okay. Can you imagine there's a mantra in imagine, I don't know if there is, but I haven't heard. I've heard a couple mantras. But I'll say, can you imagine there's a mantra, and the mantra's like, you. Do you know? It's as if the yogis, I couldn't tell if people imagine a yogi from India goes to the West, and it's like, it was something strange happened. It's as if everybody was saying Om, but they were saying it in short. It's like when people say the yogi thought, it's like, why aren't these guys saying Om properly? It's like, Anyways. In front of our eyes, known self, known world. The known self is trying to map the known world. Behind our eyes, we can consider an unknown self and an unknown world, right? This unknown world wasn't considered, but the idea of the soul preserved the unknown self. And the unknown self and the known self, this mystery, are simultaneous. That means, you know what it is? It's like we're three triangles, okay? But the third triangle is intersecting all of them, right? So it's as if, how would I draw it? Imagine you drew two Olympic circles, okay? And then you drew a circle right in between the two, okay? That circle in between the two is where the known self and the unknown self are yin yang. So I'm saying it's as if there's an unknown world, there's a known world, in between some weird stuff's happening, and that weird stuff is the oscillation from the known self to the unknown self constantly. This is why even in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a very unique statement. There's a moment where God has come to this archer in the middle of a battlefield and is trying to enlighten him. You know, in the middle of a battlefield, like like before a battle, actually, technically. But what happens is God says, Arjuna, you don't realize it, but me and you have been alongside each other many lifetimes. Now, most people are like, Arjuna, like, of course, when God, like literally the embodiment of God is Krishna, is saying this to Arjuna. What this means is it's as if Arjuna's oversoul, in, if I can use New Agean terms, it's as if the oversoul, the collective soul, and the individual soul were talking together, were communicating. This is a concept which we may not have had a narrative for, but I feel it is the case that we are, the moment we're individual, we're simultaneously in symbiosis with our collective. It's impossible otherwise. That means it's like, what's the precondition to being an individual? Collectivity. What is the precondition to collectivity? Individualism. Right? So unless you're an individual, you won't care for the collective, and unless you're collective, you won't value the individual, because you will see the collective is made up of the individuals. You know, I noticed that at some point the way I was thinking about human beings was wrong, and the conditioning of selfishness really causes that. We enter this world thinking that it's a taking game, not realizing that the greatest solution of actually the long-term solution is giving. But the issue with giving comes to, in some sense, if everybody is giving, how do we take? So I'm kind of seeing a nature where something unique may happen in the cultural programs, unexpected, as if the divine's elite team has arrived on Earth. You know, and what I mean by this is that rhythms, and I feel like there's gonna have, like, we are on the, let me tell you what's happening. We're about to experience, maybe in the next 100 years, the most accelerated, it's gonna break the record every year, it's gonna break the record, and it's gonna speed up, where the sophistication of man's mind, as he gets, as the attention suggests the reality's direction, the world is going somewhere, and our attention is keeping it. Lorna in the chat section says maybe there's a collective's collective. I'll get to that. The term is para-Brahman in Vedic thought, and I remember talking to this. I was playing chess online, and it was, and I was talking to this person from India. Do you know? And I remember I used the term, there was a discussion, and I used the term para-Brahman, and the guy was like, that's forbidden! You know, it was like freaking out. But let me tell you, the only thing forbidden is staying in ignorance. It's keeping your eyes closed when this world is designed just to open them. If you notice the way like nature has this constant expression, it's as if, like, you know what it is? It's as if the planet is emotional, and the planet's emotional. It's like, I don't like this empty space, and suddenly, like, human beings came out of nowhere. It's like, yo, are we the planet's emotions right now? So guys, I'm just trying to paint the picture, that thing with the Olympic circles and the middle circle, the yin-yangism of the self, of the known self and the unknown self, how we're oscillating between two worlds, a world completely full, a world completely empty, and it's as if like there's a sort of weather, as if like in the outer realms, there's weather, there's legit like actual weather. In the inner realms, the weather is the emotional turbulence throughout the day. For example, like even though I would say I can discriminate between my inner realms and my outer realms and what is language, like I don't get bothered by language anymore, but this doesn't mean that emotions don't exist. Like for me, emotions come and go, but it's no longer suffering or joy anymore. That game of love and hate is done. Like afterwards, you're just looking like as if like the planet is trying to tell you something. You treat it that way, I feel. You treat it as if the planet, like everything that happens to you, it's as if what is the antenna picking up? As if like what was the point of this signal? And some signals, for example, when a person speaks to another person, that's like that signal requires response, so the antenna picks that up easily. But if a person this antenna wants to pick up something that is non-physical, well, what are its possibilities? What are its options, right? It has to create a relationship either with the human, it has to either move beyond the human, or it never was human, So now onto the part where, and I'm trying to pilot, I'm trying to keep this episode more on the ground, guys. So I'm gonna try to think like a map maker here, or try to find those eyes. Okay. How would we map an unknown self in an unknown world? And how have we mapped a known self, again, in the known world? So in the known world, we've mapped it using literally paper. Paper and ink. So we had tools, right? So in the outer realms, if you want to build a map, you got to first have something that can preserve it. So if there's no point of building a map in the inner realms if there is no paper, if the map is changing all the time, there's like, if we can't pinpoint it accurately. So the big question of even going to map the mind, or the mind's mystery, and its steps, it's like the challenge is there something we can even map it on? Like what would we use? What pen and paper would we use to create this map? Now that pen and paper is language, believe it or not. And those people in history, those philosophers who I would say were ahead of their time, because honestly guys, philosophers are kind of like come on, who are we kidding? They're kind of like future time travel. Philosophers are really the only ones left to tackle the future. The religious mentality is tackling the past, obsessed with the past. The secular understanding in modern times is obsessed with the now. What can we see? What can we test right now in front of us, right? But only philosophy has the room. And that's the thing. As a philosopher, wonder about the future and you become a philosopher. I'm telling you, it's that easy. It's as easy as caring for the evolution of not just yourself in a world, of the worlds in yourself, right? Because what are memories? So, if we want to map the unknown self and the unknown world, here's the biggest challenge. Okay, let me say it this way. Maybe this question should be said. I feel like two questions popped up into my mind before I can even answer. It's like, okay, first thing, is it possible to map the inner realms That's the question. And to map the world onto itself means that, in a sense, right? We want to map how the mind is like moving and overlay upon the world, you know. Guys, I've never mentioned this in the talks, but if anybody would like to honor me and my work, treat me as a pilot. I would say when it comes to these Mr. Within talks, at least. You know, that means it's like a pilot you just say hi to. Can you imagine? It's like the people are seeing like in the future being on an airplane, and the pilot comes and everybody sees the pilot and they're like, nice. The pilot goes into the plane, you know, and the pilot goes into the cabin, and then some passenger suddenly is like, wait a minute, the pilot's sitting right beside me. And little did they know, nanotechnology has made the greatest pilots be able to be clonable. Right? Oh man, sci-fi's out of control. Okay, so to continue, and I need more like mystical music right now. Okay. Guys, this next song is I would say one of my top songs in this existence. This is the song I have flown a lot in the inner realms with. So now back to mapping, trying to map the mind, right? So, sorry guys, my thoughts may appear, they're all over the place, but I'm gonna try to sum it up, so if you keep listening maybe. So let me see. Right now I'm a known self. I go experience a new part of the known world, right? So what is the formula? Known self explores new ways, new positions, the known self explores new angles of the known world, right? So we have right now a picture of the world, and this picture should be endlessly updating. Like, people should never brag about knowledge, by the way, because it doesn't make sense. It's something that it's like skill that is being polished in every second. With every blink of an eye, the person's knowledge is changing, you know. I can even feel it sometimes when I give these talks. I can notice my breathing kind of being like ocean waves. So sometimes my distractions in this talk or my pauses occur because my breathing, my attention going to my breathing sets off, like shifts my attention from that inner realm landscape. right? So the awareness to the breath, like I can't see my lungs right now, but I can hear my breathing, right? I can feel the lungs, right? But when it comes to also, let's say if I was to imagine clouds, so that imagination of clouds and that hearing of my breathing are like in the same room. Our senses, even though they reflect reality, they're in the room of where imagination's hanging out. So I would say we have a known self, exploring, finding new angles of the known world, and then that's how it has something to map. So we need to first see, is it possible to be an unknown self? Then, is it possible for this unknown self to see the unknown world in a new unknown way? Right? Sorry, I'm getting a bit intense here. But and that means we have to repeat something we're doing in the conscious waking state, for example, in something that's unconscious. So imagine a person somehow, let's say, I'm pretty sure there's people on this planet who are like this. I haven't had, I've maybe, like when I've looked at my dream life, maybe only once I saw a dream twice, but it was in the same dream. It was like my dream was glitching and I woke up twice in the dream before I woke up, So I woke up once in the dream and it was still a dream, and then I woke up again, right? It was weird. It was a dream glitch. In the dream state, the known self is absent, right? When a person's dreaming, that's the best example of an unknown self, something that even no person can deny, right? Any person who's been conscious in a dream, that's your unknown self, because your body's asleep. What is generating your body there? The unknown activity of the mind. The known self, it's not just enough for the known self has to move. So how cool is this? In order for who we are now to see a new world, who we are now has to change. So when let's say self from point A changes into self from point B, the moment it changes into self from point B, it has access to the world of self point B, the self of point B. Right? So that's the thing. So it's a transference, but it's not truth yet. So in the unknown, like we are mapping. Of course, this is the challenge. We can only map what we see, right? But if we're multidimensional and we have sight in a different, more sensitive, or like our minds are kind of like antennas that are what they receive is like the superior dimension. I would say the word mapping has to change. Maybe the concept of mapping has to change, especially if it's an unknown self. I think we gotta go one stage before mapping, and we gotta go to just planting a flag. I think maybe it could be too soon for the whole species to not too soon, I'm saying too soon as if there's some things maybe we need, but we can, like the moon landing again, go plant a flag in states of mind. And how do we plant this flag? We have human beings all around the world, them identifying, like, I'm not telling people to change anything, I'm just telling them to pay attention to something, right? And that means you live your life however way you're living, just notice some things about how you're living. I would say one, we in a talk, actually, I remember there's a talk called Hunter-Gatherers of the Inner Realms. I recommend everyone to listen to that. So that's what I feel. That's what I feel. Excuse me. That's what I feel it's gonna be like. So instead of mapping, which could be a bit ambitious, maybe for the next 50 years at least, it could be ambitious. Maybe shorter if, I don't know, people subscribe. But it's like human beings experiencing states of mind that only their eyes have seen, of how the psychology to itself, like we're all examples of human beings, right? So we can all share feedback from the inner realms, as if every person, it doesn't matter what kind of life you've lived, an advanced civilization will be smart enough to see value in everything. Because that's just how we should roll, right? It's like some things you see value, and it's so incredible how value systems generate in accordance to believe it or not, ultimately an ultimatum behind the scenes of the psychology. That means there is a reason I'm speaking, right? There ultimately in my subconscious, but that reason is non-dual. So it doesn't pertain to my personality. So I feel pretty much, I could say in a way, my metaphysics feels like I'm a cell inside a universal organism, or I am a known part of an unknown universal activity. Now this activity is being painted as intelligent by the self, right? Now let's say I've experienced moments where I've gone in nature and I've sat down, and to close your eyes in nature or outside is a very strange thing to do. That means to trust the moment and to sit down and to just close your eyes. Like there's this picture they draw of Buddha, and of course you can say you can engage it on a story level, but the Buddha was meditating and he was in samadhi. That means he was in some non-dual I don't know what I should call it, ultimate hood. So he was just experiencing an ultimate state, and there was no time, so there was no personality's desire to have the body move. We don't realize how much of this body functions when you're a person, kind of like in movies you see the person is in a coma or something, and the person's family come and call the person's name, for example. You know, so it's like that person, so their attention is going to being human, so they come to the realm. That means it's like you see it in the psychology of warriors, even, you can say, and a lot of I would say it would be just the knight's honor and a sort of warrior psychology. That means when the person reaches a moment of ultimate suffering, right, and it's like the moment you fail yourself, what do? What's the backup system then, right? When a person fails themselves or does something that it's like their performance in front of themselves is unsatisfactory. What they do is you help yourself, and if you can't help yourself, you know, you help the realm at least. And you know, silence is the biggest sign. That means if suddenly in the next, I don't know, let's say 50 years, suddenly the species starts talking less, like record number of statistics are coming, people are talking less, yet they are communicating way more high quality. You know, that means the inner realms and the outer realms are in sync, not just that the person learns to speak just by, what's the term I want to use? It's like the way language is meant to be wielded is to be the transcription of an inner film. So it's something which is like an inner cinematic experience which I am giving words to. And I'm pretty sure every poet in history has ever done this. Like, that's how it works. The world echoes behind our eyes. That's why we can close it and know it's still here. That's why we can close our eyes and know the world is still here. It's remarkable, isn't it? How knowing is so there. So much of life is just happening. It's like the person's like, alright, I'm here now, I'm born, I exist, alright, time to control something. Then the person's like, wait a minute, is everything happening on its own? Then what am I doing here as an ego? You know? So, and so then comes the greater realization that the ego is also part of nature, and it's a choice. It's so remarkable how much of where we are gonna end up to ourselves is a choice. That means the future of the person. Choices are like portals we enter. They are literally different parallel narratives of the world, different karmic outcomes of the story of the self in the moment. Whether the person sits down and meditates, whether the person, like the shamanic native Amazonian wisdom, they use a psychedelic route, whatever approach the human being does, just bring something back to the tribe. That's it. That's all Mr.Within is asking. For the species to care, to report its subjective experience as honestly as it can. That means if there was a human being, let's say one human being wrote one honest book, and a human being wrote, like, I don't know, a lot of dishonest books, and they got super popular and whatever. But that one person who wrote an honest book of their experience, that person sharing even diaries, I would say, they're like scrolls of our lifetimes, you know. If you lived a lifetime in a day, I mean. The person shares their inner realm, and look at what's going to happen. Imagine 8 billion human beings on a rock in the middle of nowhere, that they don't believe there's other dimensions, and they've fixated their culture on just being a certain type of self in a certain kind of picture, and yay, like, you know, imagine. Reality. Again. Eight billion human beings sharing their inner realms, and all of these through a network of advanced communication, properly managed and communicated. And pretty much we create a library of the information of the worlds behind our eyes, having departments, and imagine this great library of the mind, of humanity's mind we have in the future, and every person's name is gonna be on this bookshelf. That means it's gonna, right now people are like, I don't know if I want to be a writer or not. In the future, the advanced civilization would say you have to. Why? because nobody else can share what you see. That's the truth of our sight. We're like cameras that have to care to share what they record. And so if 8 billion human beings share, and we have honesty filters by bringing honor back into culture, we will have honesty. If we have honesty, we will have accuracy in information. If we have accuracy in information, we can separate between misinformation and information. And let me tell you what I mean by that. I mean a purification that is not per se, okay, the person has the wrong idea, slap that out of their hand and give him another idea. It's literally, and I called it in one talk, and I recorded a talk specifically on this sentence I'm going to say, and I feel the talk escaped into the void somewhere. The talk maybe wasn't meant. Like I don't know where it is, but it was called an evolutionary return to nature. An evolutionary return to nature. That is the great purification of the human species. We are going to consciously realize we are the world, where before we were just unconscious. So this would suddenly make all those people who are like, what's the meaning in this life? At least you can share what you saw, so other people who come after could figure out, right? That's ultimately the strategy, right? It's kind of like simplicity has nowhere else to go other than complexity, and complexity may infinitely go into this chaos of ignorance, but the simplicity builds it. So when people realize whatever complex way they've been looking at their life, you can also simultaneously look at that whole complexity as simpler things being that complexity. Just like letters make up a word, you can look at a concept, right, and be like, oh my God, this concept is causing suffering. And you can see how that concept is made from, I mean, in my language, I call it eventums. Yeah, anyways, that's... So 8 billion human beings sharing their inner realms. We have this sort of renaissance and multidimensional renaissance for the first time. The internet, genius move, I don't know, like whichever beings karma led to the internet, like the universe probably is giving you your medal already. And so we're gonna create what the future generations are gonna need to properly map the inner realms. That means we're not like, this is the thing, it makes perfect sense. We have to kind of be the bridge they walk on, right? And that's this most genius chess move, right? We can do. That means we push the wagon, a wagon of civilization. Okay, I should call it a wagon. We push the chariot of civilization as far as we can, even till our last breath, you know, as if the soul knows why it has come. We have not, it's like, you see, that's the beauty of the mind's multidimensionality. You could feel like atoms in the middle of nowhere, but suddenly you're gonna feel hungry and you're gonna come back to that identity. You know, that means it's so remarkable. We have entered this realm to use the body. This totally dismantles the psychology of death. Do you know? Because it would make the relationship with the body like a person holding a pen, and when you drop the pen, the body is no longer needed to write anything with, right? So it's as if, like, it's kind of like rent a karma, but rent It's like rent a car, then rent a karma, then rent a elemental karma. You know, so it's like you're like, okay, the periodic table wants itself back. Okay, all right, that's understandable. You know, it's like midway, the person's like, what did I do with my life? You know, so. Oh man. If this happens, we're gonna, all those people who somehow have felt like going and sharing content online, and they might be like, why am I doing this? You know, I'm telling you, it has a purpose, but its purpose is way ahead, right? So now is a time where we have to consider, we have never had this sophisticated ability to communicate globally. It's a miracle. It's a weird miracle. It's not like the miracle we wanted, but it's the miracle we got. You know? So we start planting the fields. Like farmers, we begin sharing. We create a massive archive. The future generations open their eyes, and we create a cultural program that doesn't enslave the person to itself. Right? We create a cultural program that liberates the person. That means a multidimensional culture means, hey, we're all cool, you know, if we don't obsess. That's it. Everything can go on if the attention, if a person realizes they can pilot their attention. That's it. That's what's missing. The biggest source of suffering is the lack of realization that the attention is you are the pilot of your attention in this realm. And now imagine realizing that. Imagine as an infinite being. Imagine you realizing that as a non-dual being. You know what that would mean? That would mean that would mean infinity is in the finite, is in the finite. You know? You know, I've had moments where I just remember there were times that where it's like a classroom kind of memory where where I just remember moments where the teacher asked me something and I was like so in my own zone. I was so in my own zone where I'm like, where is this distant voice coming from, like in my inner you know? So we flag, sorry guys, I'm gonna get back to the talk. We flag, we flag all these inner realm experiences. We create an archive. We begin seeing patterns. We begin systemizing those patterns. We start having a relationship, with a conscious, collective relationship with the collective unconscious. Right now, it's like individuals having a relationship with the collective unconscious, but a collective system having a relationship with the unconscious means like all those institutions we see right now in society, ideologically oriented, where they all have like some sort of world view that's the ultimate. They want the world, like I can tell you all like honestly, it's the Hunger Games but for ideology. Like ideological systems are like trying to be the last one on the hill. Last man standing on the hill, and it's like so unnecessary. So a collective group of people suddenly noticing the collective unconscious will liberate themselves out of collective ignorance. Because let me tell you, an idea is a collective being, especially when groups of people clone themselves as it, right? For me, on some level, I like being like, I see beauty in many things because I see their chaos first, sometimes. That means sometimes you can see the destruction of something and see that destructed, like see the future of the destruction of something. Like right now, I'm looking at this bottle of iced tea and I could see its future. It's gonna be like in a landfill somewhere. Does that make me a fortune teller? It can't. I don't know. It's it's like that's the thing. A fortune teller could never say I don't know anymore. The fortune teller's like, oh shit, I gotta say something, Oh man. I'm joking, guys. What I'm trying to say is that the attention can fathom the future of something, just like we can know that the biological being, creature, is going to at some point close its eyes and it's going to leave this realm. The attention's going to leave this realm. It's like self-glorification stops. Even the artificial glorification of God stops as well. That means the person stops, the person feels that before they even worship God, let's say you're a religious person hearing me right now, before you worship God, God deserves the most natural thing. God deserves what it created, pretty much, right? So you would have to look at your nature, right? Because for me, in the religious paradigm, the biggest, I don't want to say confusion, but mystery. The biggest mystery is how people, in trying to convert people to other religions, it's like, did God make a mistake in creating people? Do you see what I mean? Like it's like it's very strange. It's as if like if God didn't make a mistake, why does man need to do anything? If God made a mistake, then man must do something. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is something that, I don't know, I don't know how to fathom it. Because it moves beyond linear human imagery, and it just goes to this point where you're like, okay, so God created a man like clay and imbued it with breath, with its breath or something. And then God tested its creature like a scientist. But I want to say, that means God was the first scientist, Oh man, this episode's out of control, guys. Bear with me. Endure endless effort. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is, God created something, and then God tested what it created. What it created failed the test. It fell. And in a strange way, it's as if it's God from the beginning. It's all, in the same way that it's like God's fault. It's like another way of saying it's like what happens to the human being is based on the whole universe's activity. Of course, this is closer to Spinoza's God rather than the Abrahamic God, but What I'm trying to say is God couldn't forgive man, but when man descended, he could forgive man, right? So there's this whole strange thing that, and there's this sentence, I don't know if it's common in all Abrahamic traditions, but the sentence was something like, only God knows what's in your heart. That means nobody in the outer realms can really see you. So only God's creation is known by God, right? And that's why, and if you take that too linguistically serious, that's what leads to inquisitor psychology. But I'm just trying to say that the idea is even more deeper. The mystery of the Abrahamic traditions goes deeper. It goes to a point where is Earth? That means where is Earth, right? We're in a pitch black room as far as we're concerned visually. Visually, we're in a dark room. Even scientists were like, okay, it's too dark to see. Call it dark matter. Call it dark energy. You know? It's just too dark to see. So the scientific mind noticed the unobservable universe. And we noticed it really the moment Einstein's space-time made it clear that the faster we move, like think about this, the faster we move at the speed of light, time slows down. So imagine a creature was moving faster than the speed of light, it would be timeless. So if you experience a moment where you're timeless, could it be strangely the same antenna frequency as the timeless? Could it be that in the moment where we don't know what to do, that is the most timeless moment of being, you know? You know? And so, of course, you can even say this mapping the world onto itself, it's the effort of every ideological system. Even like religion is an attempt to do this. Science is an attempt to do this, but with more an empirical analysis. Do you know that means the scientist is like, hey man, you know, I gotta touch it. Like I know you believe in like the supernatural, but I want to touch the supernatural. And you're like, buddy, how can you touch something that's more than the natural, right? Like your finger won't even enter that dimension, you know? Like how can natural fingers touch the supernatural? Do you know what I mean? Like conceptually, it's like the smaller onion layer trying to capture the bigger onion layer. It's like impossible. But at the same time, it's not impossible. It's just that language is disguising itself as us, and until we notice beyond the language, like we notice the language threshold, I feel that's where our true multidimensionality comes out. And it never means like we should keep civilization in a way where it's like there's a wilderness, there's like what I can say is that our civilization, our knowledge, our us being human, or let's say the humanized dimension of civilization. For example, in the future, aliens living among us, like being like having passports where it's like planet and like species and all that. So it's like if in the future it's something like that. It's like the humanized dimension is a very unique divine science project, or I should say unknown science project. Excuse me, guys. To continue, I just got super distracted right now for a moment. Let me see. What people can do is create two types of use technology in two ways: as a self-reflective tool and also as something that serves the other, serves the world. Our communication about the inner realms pretty much is going to be plants where the future generations are going to harvest. So we're going to live for the meaning that the future generations will find the true meaning. So our meaning is to live for the meaning, for humanity's ability to one day comprehend the meaning. So honor becomes the purpose of life. We honor the ultimate goal of the species, and from that honor it branches out, right? So if we have an incredibly honest, culturally powerful, when I say powerful I mean advanced, as if it's seen the end not the end, but it has vision. Pretty much I'm saying the honor and all the database of the inner realms, the hunter-gathering from the inner realm, from with the evolution of the cultural program through honor. And the honor is very simple: 8 billion creatures on a rock. We just want to see what the most advanced possibility is before our eyes close. That's pretty much it. I think everybody should, like, I don't know. I'm not going to say everybody, but if somebody feels drawn to this vision and care for it, then. I don't know. Every person should attempt mapping the world onto itself. Pretty much our brains are doing that. The brain is overlaying subjects over objects, then treating the object as a subject, then getting disappointed when the object wasn't the subject. Like that's when we move past that phase, we're going to be piloting our attention better. If we pilot our attention, think of it right now, singular human being, we have the responsibility of being one type of person, but in the future, it's like having the responsibility to be multiple levels of human ability implemented in society. Right, so we want to build an advanced civilization. We got to start from first building advanced people, right? By advancing people, not build, but I mean advancing people. Galileo says you can never teach anyone anything. You can make them realize it from within. And when I say honor, I just noticed something that I think this may happen to stand-up comedy, right? So like, this is totally on a tangent, but I'm going to share it. So many comedians have built this art form of stand-up comedy, and you can say what is keeping at least humor is a giant part of the decency of modern civilization, and I would say modern Western civilization. Now, humor, it started off as being like the jester of the king, right? And even at that time, that was seen as a noble thing, right? It was a human being who had access to like the palace and whatever. But the idea has come down to be shunned, and this kind of shunned echoing of the comedian, it's as if the comedian, all the comedians that go on stage and try to find humor in their own mishaps in life, like, I'll tell you, it's like they haven't realized they're a human being they're talking about. You know, like, so that's the thing. So it's going to even be the rekindling of honor, right? It's going to be the rekindling of multidimensional, where it's like humor is elevating. It's like a skill. It's like this craft. I shouldn't say skill. It's like this craft, this art form, and this art form is gonna elevate, and it's gonna be one of the most important elements of building. No, I'm gonna tell you, humor is here to be like the backup system for multidimensional. It's like humor is for the multidimensional. That means if you see it in one dimension, it doesn't make sense. If you see it in two dimensions, it's hilarious, dude. So we need to honor the multidimensional, and it's weird. Let me tell you why it's weird. Because the secular culture is banishing the multidimensional, and in some sense exiling it, and the religious factions of the world are exiling. The great exile of multidimensionalism. The great multidimensional exile. That's the phase. That's the phase of, I would say, religion. I shouldn't just say religion, of course. I mean, it's very hard. If I choose to look at it from the eyes of a sociologist, I would have to mesh all ideological systems together. Somebody in the chat section said we need a good dictator with a good plan. Let me tell you, the Buddha, somebody went up to the Buddha and said, yo Buddha, is there going to be another Buddha? And this is like a story where the Buddha's like, nah man, Buddhism's going to be spread so much that people are not going to need, people are going to all be Buddhas by then, right? So it's just the evolution of attention, right? I'm pretty sure Buddha realized this is mind-boggling, that the mind is here somehow. Like, I'm pretty sure that was like an enlightening moment for Buddha. You just realize existence is, like, it's like how it's like, it's not even phenomenal anymore. It's like, it just is. So the idea is not self-glorification, because the glory of the self is in how the collective does. Like, what's the point of one person on this planet being like, yay, I made it, and then the whole planet is like, what, you know, like, so it becomes something where eventually the person has to realize, I said it this way in one talk, where the difference between the Buddha and the Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva, I'll say to the Buddha was focused on inner self, from going from the individual hell to the individual heaven, self-enlightenment. Then the Bodhisattva, though, was the one who had realized, who wanted to not go into the individual heaven, but the collective heaven. So the collective heaven that means the moment you enlighten, yourself gets enlightened, you notice the world's hell. You notice, like, you notice, let me tell you what I mean by that. It's like the individual, okay, so from the individual hell, we went to the individual heaven. From the individual heaven, we notice the collective hell. From the collective hell, we go to the collective heaven. It's the same psychology being implemented, where you see these, you see trillionaires and billionaires and like these very notable people who are like, they've become philanthropists. It's like, what else you got to do after you're back, you found your own chair, right? So it becomes something like, where I would say now more than ever, the advanced communicator is learning from the Bodhisattva. And the term Buddha just means awakened, the awakened one. That means Buddha was the first human being in history noted, and I would say, who literally his name, because it was awakened, right, the awakened one, his name is literally, he's the first person who woke up when he was awake. Like, that's how I would say people should remember Buddha, right? But of course, even when you go further back, there was like, the Yoga Patanjali Sutras were like going on too, like back in the day. So like things echo, but I'm saying like the Buddha was like the first person to note, I would say, step out of the linguistic simulation and to realize the suffering ends from within, even though it began outside. So anyways, guys, I hope this episode's been helpful. This attempt to map the world onto itself, pretty much anybody who's written a diary, that's what you're doing. You're mapping your mind over the moment. right? And so you can, I would say, knowledge should not be seen as an accumulation, as a sort of give and take kind of thing. Knowledge should be seen as just a giant exploration, as if imagine the educational system was like a general, and the general shouted, "All right, human beings, explore. We have no clue where we are." And everybody began looking, and there was this tolerance, right? Bertrand Russell, he gave this moral advice, and he said, charity and tolerance, that's what the future needs. So what's the point of that charity and tolerance? That charity and tolerance is to provide for more angles on this world, on this unknown world. And all of it can be useful if we can find a way. For now, there has to be the individual's effort to serve the collective until the collective gets its act straight, and then the collective begins serving the individual properly. So that's the strategy, and mapping the world, like having a caring to share your at least from an inner realm idea level, just like an inventor builds the thing, someone writing down something that was they only saw through their inner realm. It's like that's like the paper has become the radar scan, or like the antenna, like it shows you the signal. So I guess the only thing Mr. Within can say is map away. And oh my god, why hasn't somebody made an app and call it map with 2 P's? Like, what are people doing in Silicon Valley? I sometimes wonder. There was something incredible about this picture, and I find all these pictures for the site from like this random wallpaper site. And so anybody who knows where these pictures come from, I'm looking to know who they are, who the people who drew these are, so please write in the comment section or something. But in this picture, I don't know who took this picture, but there's something remarkable of, regardless, like, you see how even though it's just color and it's just light and digital manipulation aside, it's as if each community has a color, or I would say has a state. Imagine like this, imagine a state of mind. Now imagine a state of minds. Right? So a state of mind. right? So as if the whole state has a mind of its own. So it's like energy, right? Human beings, in the simplest analysis of what we are, we're like containers of energy. And as these containers of energy, our communication generates expression, and this expression adds to the color of the community, right? Of the society, or the thoughts that are going on in that society, right? So right now, if we could somehow map and grid the morality of all human beings on the planet and give morality a color. So imagine somebody in the future who did something wrong, suddenly a red glow came from them, right? Somebody who suddenly did something right. There was like, imagine some advanced, drones measuring system where every action was seen as its point. That means human beings, they don't need to get jobs in the future. They just live in society being helpful, and the surveillance, imagine like golf ball sized drone following everybody. Like, those are going to be the future phones. And so this golf ball is taking in everything you do, right? So when it's taking everything you do, that means like, you just do whatever, you help, like you pick up trash, you get points for that, imagine, right? You help a senior citizen across the street, it's like, oh my god, did that person just get 100, I don't know, honor points? We can totally create an honor system based on points, right? Like that exists in sports. It exists in, for example, video games, like those online type of video games. Excuse me. There's a light to behavior, a color to behavior. Let's say we see, like, our species is literally on such a, we're still caught like on outer color. Like, people haven't realized we're actually more red than we are any other color of our skin. Do you know? We are more red. We are all like red, more red than. Do you know the color of our skin is not the mass of our whole color? You know, it's not the color of our whole mass. You know? Human evolution means evolution of whatever there is there. And so if we have a mind, that means the mind has to evolve. And the mind evolves either by its own effort or entering a game, and then through the game evolving. So let's say that we are in a world filled with color. And when I say color, that means there's different ideologies, right? And it's kind of strange, but alongside the world just being this physical event taking place, it's like emotions make an object, like emotions are like a fog that make the object and subject have the mystery in between. Right? Like, because if we didn't have emotions, we would just be mechanical. We would just be like robots. Imagine a civilization where aliens land down and everybody's just moving like robots, and the aliens are like, what are these guys doing? Aren't they natural creatures? And we're like, no, we've been conditioned to behave like robots. And the aliens are like, all right, this is where this species needs some time to self-reflect. It's as if, can you imagine extraterrestrials come down to Earth and all our human leaders get ready? This is, imagine like a future event, okay? And all the leaders get ready to shake hands with the extraterrestrial like entourage or whatever comes. And let's say they're incredibly enlightened and like peaceful aliens, and somehow we know this, I don't know, like we feel peaceful around them. So the alien comes and the alien looks at us and we're like, welcome to our world, and the alien says, too soon. And suddenly all their ships lift and go back into the air, and the human beings are like, why didn't the aliens shake our hand? What did it mean, too soon? So anyways, just, I don't know, when people realize it's every moment is once in a lifetime, that's the most obvious reason, like why peace is important. If there was peace, we may get bored, but how do we counter that? We counter that with multidimensionality. That means the healthiest thing that parents can do is make their children realize that the species doesn't know everything, right? When a person realizes that, then they care to figure out where they are, right? If before they were just emotionally, I don't know, comprehending the moment, now it becomes, okay, where am I, right? Reality sets in. So study your attention, whoever you are, and I feel actually, I want to go into a Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj quote tunnel. I'm going to read a few, like maybe 5 quotes from it. But I feel there's something there. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, to know that you are a prisoner of your mind is the dawn of wisdom. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, realize that your world is only a reflection of yourself, and stop finding fault with the reflection. Attend to yourself, set yourself right, mentally and emotionally. The physical self will follow automatically. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says the ultimate point of view is that there's nothing to understand. So when we try to understand, we're only indulging in acrobatics of the mind. Whatever you have understood, you are not. Why are you getting lost in concepts? You are not what you know, you are the knower. And the way I'm saying, guys, this is where I love these moments, because this is where my whole effort with this channel comes in. You see how Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, whatever you have understood, you are not. Why are you getting lost in concepts? You are not what you know, you are the knower, right? Now, let's say this is what Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj is saying is the truth. Now, we are still knowing we are the knower. That means it doesn't matter if you realize you're not what you know, as Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, or you are the knower. So you realize you are the knower, the body's still here, right? As long as the body is still here, what he is saying here is in some sense that there's nothing to understand. It's true, but it's like there is something to understand until there's nothing to understand, you know? So, but there is a point. This is where I would say it is a choice. I have decided that because now is a phase in human history where communication needs to advance. It's important that a communication is expressed, but it is polished also through its own expression, right? So it could be that if what Nisargadatta Maharaj is saying acrobatics, I'm like, let's get the acrobats go become explorers. That's it. So I'm saying if we translate it as exploration and it has a collective value, then it's like it's like it is true, it is ignorance, but we at least created a system that is recycling ignorance through a multidimensionality that is tolerant, right? So it would be a sort of situation where it is true we're not a concept, and we can get lost in concepts, as Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj is pointing out here, but at the same time, you can realize you're not a concept and use a concept. It's just that it doesn't have owner, right? It's like watching like a cloud pass by. Nobody owned that cloud. Nobody was like, hey, don't look at my cloud. You know, there was no like, you know, there wasn't that ideological ownership, you know, of something that is just nature, right? So that means the acrobatics is the knower too. That's what I'm trying to say. The acrobatics are of the knower. So Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj is speaking, like we gotta, like he's saying exactly the right thing, but he's speaking to a certain audience. But yeah, there is more than language here. So regardless of whatever, even if I say advanced civilization and advanced communicators, it's like, remember, this is a mystery and you're here, right? So it's like to know your own eyes is the ultimate. It's like, as Sri Ramana Maharshi would say, your own self-realization is the greatest service you can render the world. What he meant that is like as the glow of your expression increases, automatically the darkness of the whole room the species is in can go away, right? It's something like that. Anyways, Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, he says, instead of searching for what you do not have, find out what it is that you have never lost. Incredible. Alan Watts has a quote that is parallels to this. He says, imagine going to sleep and never waking up, then imagine waking up having never gone to sleep. It's in the same lines. So, one last quote, and we can call it a night. It's like, keep it down, Mouse. What are you doing? It's like mice these days. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, it is always the false that makes you suffer, the false desires and fears, the false values and ideals, the false relationships between people. Abandon the false and you are free of pain. Truth makes happy. Truth liberates. Truth is how intelligence is in the room before the stories overlay. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. I'll be on Discord for those interested. Namaste. And check out the Patreon. There's interesting content there too. Yeah, namaste.